Ooh, ooh. I don't look very bright there, do I? Let's have a little bit more light, shall we? That's better. I can see myself now. Hi, everybody. This is Mr. Duncan in England. How are you today? Are you okay? I hope so. Are you happy? I really, really hope so. Here we are once again, live on YouTube. I think my voice is a little bit better today. What do you think? It still sounds a little rough. However, I think my voice is a little bit better today. One of the reasons for that is that last night I decided to give my voice a rest. Mr. Steve was very pleased that I did that because it meant that he would have a very quiet night. I hope you can see me. I hope I am in front of you right now. I'm just trying to get the live chat working. We have had a problem today with the internet connection. I don't know what happened, but something very strange happened with the internet connection. So I hope you can hear me all right. I hope I am coming through loud and clearly. Oh, a lot of people already on the live chat. Nice to see so many people here. I am just making sure that I can see the live stream. Yes, there it is. We have partial success, not complete success. We only have partial success. Can I say hello to Mr. Bruno, Constantine, Adrian? Also we have Anna Kobe, Flower Espoir, Maria, Eric and Connell. Congratulations, because you are all first on today's live chat. Isn't that nice? So congratulations, welcome to my Sunday out in the garden. Two things that I should mention first of all. One of them is that the weather is a little strange today. They have said we might have some rain later on, so I'm having to make sure that I keep all of my equipment dry. You have to keep your equipment dry, especially when you are using a lot of electricity around you. So that's one of the things I am definitely doing today. I am just moving my microphone slightly so you can hear me better. Thank you very much for joining me today. A lot of things going on around here today. Many people are in their gardens doing their Sunday chores. Mr. Steve is also in the garden. Would you like to have a look at where Mr. Steve has been working today? So you will see Mr. Steve later. For those who are big fans of Steve, I know there are many. In fact, sometimes I get a bit worried. Sometimes I feel a little bit threatened by Mr. Steve. Steve will be here in a little while. He has been working in the corner of the garden, and there it is. So there you can see where Mr. Steve has been working. He's been very busy, and he's actually planted some new bushes. You might be able to see in the corner of the garden there is actually a new bush that Mr. Steve planted around 1 hour ago. So that's what Steve is doing at the moment. He has been very busy in the garden. He's been doing lots of things. So in the corner of the garden you can see there is a red bush, and it wasn't there before because Mr. Steve has planted that bush. If you plant something, it means you place something in a certain position. You put something in a certain place. So Mr. Steve has been planting some new bushes. So far, he has only planted one, but a little bit later on, he will be planting some more as well. He will be planting some more bushes a little bit later on. So that is the view from Mr. Steve's corner. And yes, Steve will be with us a little bit later on. He will be joining us on the live stream. And of course you have me as well. On a Sunday, it's a fun day. It's time to improve your English listening. Of course, the reason why we are here is to listen, chat, and hopefully enjoy the world of English. Nice to see so many people here already. I know we are still living in strange times. Here in the UK, things are still a little bit strange as well. I will be honest with you. Things are a little weird at the moment. Is that better? I'm just changing my lights slightly because the lighting today is a little weird. Now normally we have a lot of sunshine, but today it is unusually cloudy. Today we've had many days of lovely weather. However, today is a little unsettled, unfortunately. And unfortunately, there is also going to be a lot of rain next week. How am I going to cope with that? I'm not sure. So it looks as if the weather is going to be changing quite a lot over the next few days. A lot of rain next week. So we will see what happens. Another thing I want to mention is the fact that many people are now starting to go back to work. Things in some parts of the world are returning to normal. So what about where you are? Where you are in the world, how are things happening? What is actually happening now where you are? Are people starting to go back to their normal lives? Are things starting to turn back to normal? So what is happening where you are at the moment? Hello to lots of regular viewers on today. Hello to Federica, also Anna Pica. Luis Mendez is here today. I have another very common item to show you. So every day during the next few days, I'm going to show you interesting things from everyday life. Something that you might not know the name of in English. So that is what I'm doing today. Also, we are talking about the subject that we talked about yesterday. So the things that you are unable to do because of some physical problem, some disability. That is what we talked about yesterday. Today we are talking about being able and unable. So there are many words and phrases that we can use to describe being able to do things and also being unable. So we are actually looking at both sides of this subject today. Both sides. Yes, Mr. Steve is here. He will be here in a few minutes. I'm not sure what Steve is doing today on the live chat. However, he will be with us. One of the big problems at the moment is Mr. Steve doesn't have his phone, you see. He doesn't have the phone. So I think I might have to go and get that, so Mr. Steve can look at the live chat. Meanwhile, here we are all together once again. Yes, we are all together. It's a very strange, unusual, cloudy Sunday. It's Sunday today. It's the weekend still, even though every day feels like Sunday. It really does. Hi everybody, for those who don't know who I am, my name is Duncan. I teach English on YouTube. I'm here every day at the moment because of all of the weird stuff that is going on in the world right now. Kamlesh, hello Kamlesh, nice to see you here today. You have very black soil in your garden. I know this is very fertile. We have this in India. Oh, in India we have light brown soil. So apparently, depending on where you are in the world, certain types of soil are more fertile than others. One of the things that Steve is going to do today, he's going to show us what he is actually doing in the garden. So this is something a bit unusual. We don't normally chat with Steve whilst he's doing his gardening, but today we are going to try it. We are going to see if it works. If it does work, I will be both happy and surprised, to be honest. So the reason why we are all here today is to enjoy a little bit of English. You can listen to some new words. You can also chat on the live stream as well. So there are many ways of enjoying this live stream. And of course I have a YouTube channel with many recorded English lessons. And I've been doing this for ever such a long time. A very long time indeed. Hello Marcia. Hello Mr. Duncan. And hello to everyone. Will Mr. Steve join us today? He will be here in around about 15 or 20 minutes time. So Steve will be here. He is in the garden. He's been very busy this morning. In fact, he's been in the corner of the garden. And there it is. So that is what we will be looking at a little bit later on. And Steve will be explaining exactly what he's been doing. What has Mr. Steve been up to? We will find out a little bit later on. Meanwhile, we have the live chat. So are things returning to normal where you are? Over the past almost 6 weeks here in the UK, we have been locked down completely. So what is happening where you are? Federica says, here in Italy, we will go back to work on the 4th of May. So next week we'll see the beginning of May. In fact, on Friday, next Friday, it will be May the 1st, a new month. And quite possibly some new challenges as well. I think the next 3 or 4 weeks here in the UK and also around the world are going to be very interesting. It will be interesting to see what happens next with you know what. You know what I'm talking about. I'm not sure if it's good. I'm not sure if it's good to return to normal, says Florence. This is one of the problems, as I mentioned yesterday. People don't seem to know what to do next. No one knows what to do next. Here in the UK, we are quite uncertain if we should start relaxing all of the rules, if we should allow people to start mixing again. So I think what might happen, I have a feeling, here in the UK, they might actually start telling us that we must wear masks when we go out in the public. So if we are amongst other people, we must wear masks. So this is something they are talking about at the moment. It hasn't been decided. So no one knows at the moment what's going to happen next. It's very, very strange. Elias, Hello to Elias. I am learning so much with you. Greetings. Can you hear the blackbird? There is a blackbird sitting next to me, singing. Singing a very happy song. Oh. And also at the moment, I'm suffering from... At the moment, I'm suffering from hay fever as well. Yes, the pollen is still floating around in the air, and I am still suffering quite a lot from hay fever. So you might notice during today's live stream, I might be sneezing a little bit from time to time. And the reason for that is I am suffering from hay fever. However, it has nothing to do with... It has nothing to do with that. Before anyone gets worried or upset, you don't have to worry. I'm okay. I am suffering from my seasonal allergy, as all of the pollen goes up my nose and makes me sneeze a lot. Beatrice, oh, thank you very much. Beatrice is admiring the lovely bush in the corner of the garden. It looks very delicate. Mr. Steve is definitely a good gardener. We will see. We will see in a short while. We are going to have a look at how good Mr. Steve is at gardening. That coming up a little bit later on. Hello, Quran Kareem. Who is fasting today for Ramadan? Who? Is anyone else here who is fasting, not eating? I'm not sure if I could do that. I like my food too much, to be honest. Pedro Belmont is here today. I have a suggestion for an interesting class. Show us your bedroom and your personal belongings. I won't be doing that because that's my private life. Sometimes you have to have a divide between your private and your public. And that is what I'm doing. Hello, Sassy. Hello, Mr. Duncan. I'm late. I love your green shirt. Well, this is blue. I think it's blue. Is it blue? It looks blue to me. I love your green shirt. Green is my favourite colour. Here in Italy, we are beginning to go back to normal on the 4th of May. Here in the UK, we will be going back to normal on the 7th of May. So at the moment, they are saying that things will go back to normal on the 7th of May here in the UK. However, that can all change. That can all change. It can. They might decide to extend the lockdown. Or they might allow people to start going out into the public again, as long as they wear face masks. So we will see what happens. We will see what happens. Mr. Duncan, did you remember to bring some water? Thank you, Guillermo Torres. Yes, I have my water. I have remembered today to bring some water outside to make sure that my throat does not get too dry. In fact, it starts feeling dry when I begin talking. So normally it's okay, but when I start talking, my throat becomes very dry, unfortunately. Hello. In Birmingham, it's sunny. Apparently the weather in Birmingham is nice. So today it's a little mixed. We've had cloud and not much sunshine. However, I think the sun is trying to come out at the moment. I think the sun is trying to come out right now. So maybe it is sunny in Birmingham, but here I think the sun is going to come out soon. So there is just another week of lockdown in Italy. Sujin says, we are reopening the church and temples, but we are still keeping the schools closed. Some changes happening around the world. Many people are now starting to slowly relax the lockdown. Here in the UK, we're not sure. We haven't decided yet. We haven't decided. We are still talking about it. Unfortunately, many people are still being affected by this situation. And there is still a large number of people losing their lives, which is not good. It is not good at all. Palmyra. I have a challenge in this chat, not nibbling, because Mr. Duncan always entices us with some snacks. Not today. You will be pleased to hear that I won't be eating anything today. I might be drinking lots of water, but I won't be eating any food. So I will not be enticing you. Oh, I like that. To entice means to encourage a person to do something. You are saying, come on, I'm having fun here doing this, and I want you to join in. I want you to join in with today's lesson. I am trying to entice you. I am trying to tempt you to join in. Hello to Mukund. Hello, Mukund. In India, the lockdown period has been extended until the 3rd of May. In most parts of India, many places have been quarantined. Yes, there is a lot of quarantining, a lot of segregation going on at the moment in India, keeping people who have been affected away from those who have not. I was reading a very interesting article about South Africa. Apparently in South Africa they are trying to test everyone. They are doing a very thorough testing of many people in the population. Here in the UK, unfortunately, the testing is taking a very long time. So here in the UK we have 60 million people. 60 million. So testing everyone is almost impossible. Almost impossible. Hello, Anna Rita. Hello also to Sassy. During the quarantine, I have begun to build a garden on my terrace. I discovered that I love it. Isn't it great though? During this time, as I've said before, it is a good opportunity to try new things. Maybe find a new hobby, or maybe a new interest, something that you haven't tried before. Mr. Steve has been trying very hard to make some nice food. Mr. Steve has been making cakes. He's made some very delicious cakes. He's also made some very nice meals. Last night he made a beautiful stew. Very nice. Between you and me, Steve is a very good cook. He is. Hello to Alejandro. In Chile, I have returned to my job. I work as a teacher of English, and meanwhile we are giving online lessons to our students. So many people are doing their jobs from home, including teachers. So many teachers, many schools have discovered this amazing way of teaching the students whilst they are all at home. I've been doing this for 4 years, and yet many people are just finding out about this. So I've been doing this live since 2016. However, many people have only just discovered that you can do it. Hello, Ivars. Hello, Ivars Packles. Hello, Mr. Duncan. I hope you are happy as usual. I always try to be happy even when I'm not feeling very well. I have my hay fever at the moment. I really appreciate the time you spend live streaming and also teaching English. Thank you very much. It's very kind of you. I've been here every day for the past 30 days. So I've been doing many live streams every day. And normally I am here for 2 hours every day. So I guess I should say also that tomorrow I will be here again. However, I'm not sure what the weather will be doing tomorrow, because it looks as if the weather tomorrow is going to be not good. And Tuesday, rain. Wednesday, lots and lots of rain. So we are going to have a very wet week next week here in the UK, unfortunately. You will definitely be able to hear the birds today. The birds are everywhere. They are crazy at the moment. Blackbirds, robins, chaffinches, even Mr. Pheasant. You might hear Mr. Pheasant from time to time as well, calling in the distance. Yes, thank you, Mosen. Thank you very much. Yes, the sound of nature is always a very calming thing. A lot of people use the sound of nature when they are meditating. So if you are trying to relax, the sound of nature is very soothing. It can help you to relax. Angel. Hello, Angel. Hello, Mr. Duncan. In Mexico, we have just entered stage 3. Do you mean week 3 or stage 3? So maybe some countries are doing the lockdown in stages. So they are doing it in certain ways. Here in the UK, we've been just told to stay in the house, not to go anywhere unless it is essential. I like that word. That is a word that I seem to be using a lot recently. Essential. Something that has to be done, something that you really need, something is essential. It is essential. Something is needed. Hello, Dragon Gamer. Hello, Dragon Gamer. Nice to see you here today. I've just noticed I look a very peculiar colour today. Do you think so? I look very red on the camera. I might try to correct that later. I will try to put that right. You might also notice that people are in their gardens cutting the grass with their noisy machines. Yes. There is one in particular. One in particular. Sassy says, Mr. Duncan, you should do your live lessons inside so you don't suffer hay fever. I feel very sorry for you. Thank you, Sassy. That's very kind of you. However, I do prefer coming outside to do my live streams. And to be honest with you, even inside the house, I will still suffer from hay fever. So because the pollen is very small, the particles of pollen can get everywhere. So if you are in the house and you open your windows, the pollen will come into the house. So sometimes you can suffer hay fever as much inside the house as you do outside, to be honest. So if I had a choice, I would definitely choose outside. It will always be my first choice. I'm not sure where Mr. Steve is. I hope he will be with us soon. Hello, Freddie. Here in the Dominican Republic, the lockdown will end a week from now. It would appear that many countries are going to be ending their lockdown next week. We will be ending our lockdown around the 7th of May, but we will see. We will see what happens. Shaker says, I like your glasses. Thank you very much. That's very kind of you to say. It is a little bit noisy here today. We have people using their very noisy machinery in the gardens, and also the birds. The birds at the moment are going crazy because many of them are building their nests and they are preparing to take care of their young. The sun, did you see that? I think the sun just came out then. Very nice. Hello 78 Sound. I hope that they will get rid of the bug. They will get rid of it. They will make it go away so we can get back to normal. 78 Sound, it sounds to me as if you are a little bit frustrated by what is happening. And guess what? You are not the only one. A lot of people are feeling a little frustrated at the moment. I think it would be fair to say. Hello, Mizuki. Hi, Mr. Duncan. It is me, Mizuki. How are you? I'm fine. I am also fine. Can I ask you a question? It is quite funny. 3 men were in a boat. It capsized, but only 2 got their hair wet. Why? I don't know. I hope this isn't anything rude. So I suppose you are saying something that might be a play on words. So 3 people on a boat. The boat turns over. It capsizes. So if something capsizes, it means it turns over. It turns over. 3 men were in the boat, but only 2 got their hair wet. Why? I hope you will tell me the answer. I'm looking forward to hearing what the answer is. Anna Fwong says, we have now returned to normal life. So where Anna is at the moment, has returned to normal already. I know in certain parts of Asia, things are slowly going back to normal. China is a good example, I suppose. Hello, Unicarina. I've heard about the Birmingham Library. It is very special. The Birmingham Library, there is a big library in the centre of Birmingham, and it's huge. And a few years ago, they did some restoration work, and they modernised the outside of the library. And it does look rather unusual. It is very artistic. So if you've never seen the Birmingham Library, the library that is in the centre of Birmingham, it is a very unusual building, a very unusual structure, with some very interesting designs on the front as well. Hello to Chris Redfield. Mr. Duncan, what do you know about the Spanish flu? That was a long time ago. That was in the early 1900s, wasn't it? I want to say 1918. Am I right? It seems around about that period. Yes, a very serious pandemic. And it killed millions of people. I think it was around 50 million? Yes, very serious. A very serious thing. But of course, since then, medicine has come a long way. We have many ways now of treating and helping people to prevent them from getting illnesses, and also to treat people if they become ill. So yes, you are right. Hello, Eric. Hello to you. Apparently it's the same in France. We learn English at school, but not the same quality as in France, although in the Atlantic coast, English is mostly spoken. Yes, it's interesting. Quite often in many countries around the world, you will hear languages used not only as the main language, but also there will be a secondary language. For example, when I was at school, they used to teach English as our main language, of course, but then they used to teach French and also German as well. So those were two other languages that were also taught in schools. Hello, Yen Phuong Nguyen. Hello to you. I have a feeling you are watching in Vietnam. I think so. Hello to Joe Carl. Hello, Joe Carl. How are you today? I hope you are feeling good and happy. I have something to show you. This is something that I love to play with. Would you like to see it? I will show you in a minute the thing that I like to play with from time to time. And I'm going to show you it is a common object, a thing that is very useful, especially if you want to protect something. So if you want to protect something from being broken, you will use this thing. And here it is. Can you see it? This is one of my all-time favourite things. I don't know why. It is something that is very useful, but also you can have a little bit of fun with it as well. This is something called bubble wrap. Bubble wrap. There it is. Bubble wrap. Bubble wrap is something that you use when you are packing or wrapping something that is fragile, something that is easily damaged. You normally put bubble wrap around it. Bubble wrap. I love that word. In fact, I like the word bubble. Bubble. So bubble wrap. Bubble wrap is something that is made of plastic. However, this particular plastic is very special because it has lots of little bubbles. And one of the things I like doing, if I have a piece of bubble wrap in my hand, I like to pop the bubble wrap like that. In fact, I can spend many hours sitting with some bubble wrap. And I like to pop the bubble wrap. I love popping the bubble wrap like that. So there it is, today's common object. Something you might see when you are opening a gift or a present, something you have ordered through the mail. So something you've ordered through the mail is often wrapped in bubble wrap. It is something we use to protect delicate, fragile items. Talking of fragile things, talking of things that are fragile and easily broken, someone who should be wrapped up in bubble wrap all the time. Yes, he's back with us and he's been very busy today. Everybody, please welcome at 3 o'clock here in the UK right now, exactly on time. Unlike me, it's Mr. Steve.
Hello everybody. Yes, Mr. Duncan's right. I've been very busy, unlike Mr. Duncan, who has just been messing around talking to the camera for the last hour. I've been hard at work. Can you see that plant with the red leaves? I've put that in this morning. I thought it would be a quick job, but it took me, Mr. Duncan, about an hour and a half to dig the soil and prepare for putting that plant in, and I couldn't get the plant out of the pot because the plant has been in the pot for about 2 years because I failed to find somewhere suitable to put it. and so I had to break the pot apart to get the plant out. But anyway, how are you, Mr. Duncan?
I'm not too bad.
As if I didn't know.
I'm not too bad, thank you very much.
I can't see the live chat today.
No, this is something I'm going to sort out in a moment, Steve. I'm going to get the phone, but what I will need you to do is to hold the fort. Can you do that?
You mean talk while you're away? I've got nothing prepared.
You've got a whole garden behind you.
Okay, I'll talk about that then, Mr. Duncan.
I'm almost certain, Steve, you can find something to talk about. You have a whole garden, a whole landscape behind you. I have briefly mentioned that you've been busy in the garden planting things.
I have indeed. So, as you can see, if I point over that direction, that plant in the corner is called a Photinia. A Photinia, Photinia, I think that could be correct.
Okay.
And it's unusual in that it has these lovely red leaves. And that particular variety is variegated. So the leaves can be shades of different colours. It's not just one colour. You've got the traditional Photinias are very common to put in gardens because they add a splash of colour to your garden, particularly if you've got a dark corner, which that one is. And it's a bit messy, that corner, because you've got the fence posts, which, as you can see, look a little ugly. Now, it's small at the moment. It's only about I would say a metre tall, or a yard if you're using imperial measurements, which we still do here in the UK. A yard and a metre, they're very similar in size. I think a metre's slightly bigger than a yard, but only by, say, a couple of centimetres. So I'm hoping that it's a fast growing plant. It's fast growing. So I hope that it should grow about that much this year. And then I think within 2 years, within a year or 2 years, it will have grown a couple of metres, which is just what you want if you want to quickly establish a plant and fill in an ugly area like that is in a corner. Now, I mentioned earlier, hope I'm not boring you, by the way, Mr. Duncan's disappeared because he hasn't prepared me with the phone so that I can see the live chat, because I love to see what you're talking about around the world so that I can make comments, because it's fascinating. So let me show you something. This was the container that plant came out of. Quite a big container, as you can see. Unfortunately, I couldn't save the container because the plant was so firmly fixed, because it's been in this pot for about 2 years. The roots were very congested, so they were very packed closely together, just like if the road is congested, all the cars are very close together and packed in. So the roots were solid and congested inside this container. So it's very heavy, you know, with all the soil in. So I had to break it open, smash it apart to get the plant out, which is what I did. As you can hear, I've just dropped it down. Oh, Mr. Duncan is threatening me with a hose. Now, I had to water this plant.
This is so tempting. Look at that. I've got the hose pipe, and it's full. It's full of water. It's actually working. Look.
I could turn the hose on your equipment, Mr. Duncan.
Ooh.
You wouldn't like that.
Oh, thank you. Some of my equipment does need watering.
Does a hose pipe with water and electrical equipment go well together? Mr. Duncan, he's always playing around. Have you noticed? I'm the serious one, and he's playing around Mr. Duncan, that is going to annoy me because I'm going to slip on the grass. Anyway, that's one plant in. I've got one more plant to go, and where you can see all that bare ground, I've bought some grass seed, and I'm going to put the grass seed in because we're going to have rain for the next few days, and it's going to be ideal conditions for putting grass seed in. And it's still spring, so I can just about get away with it in May. Grass seed, normally you'd want to plant that in sort of September, autumn time, or maybe February, March, but I'm going to get away with it because I'm going to water it. Mr. Duncan, you're back. Oh no, he's gone again. Where are you going, Mr. Duncan? Are you going to give me the phone? So
I've just realised Mr. Steve needs the phone, you see. He needs the phone so he can talk to you on the live chat. So give me 2 minutes. So entertain. Maybe you could sing a song. Maybe something to...
Don't want you to get a copyright infringement, Mr. Duncan.
Maybe you could sing a beautiful song to cheer everyone up.
I won't do that because Mr. Duncan will get a copyright infringement. And look how the way he manhandles me. It's so annoying. Yes, if you sing songs that are in the charts or something like that, and you sing it, then Mr. Duncan might get a strike because the algorithms on YouTube are listening in to everything that you say and everything that you do. So you've got to be very careful. People have got struck off YouTube. We don't want that to happen to Mr. Duncan, and I wouldn't be the one want to be the one to instigate that a complete ban on Mr. Duncan. Well, maybe you would like that, and then I can take over in my new channel. I'm only joking. So yes, I've got my work cut out. If we say that we have our work cut out, it means we've got a lot of work ahead of us. Our work is scheduled. Our work is ongoing. My work is cut out for me. It's there. It's in a sequence. You know it's going to happen. So I know that I've got to dig that ground over. As I say, I hope I'm not boring you with my gardening tales. I've got to dig that over, put some nice peat into the soil so that it absorbs the water, and then I've got to rake it over, and then I've got to put the grass seed in, and I've got to put it in at a certain rate. Don't want to put too much in or too little, so I've got to put in probably 30 grams per square metre. How about that? So if you want to do a law, 30, there's a square metre. I've got to weigh it out and sprinkle it all on, and then I've got to rake the seed in, water it, and hope the birds don't come along and peck out all the seeds, because if they do that, I'm going to have bare patches. Of course, Mr. Duncan loves the birds, so I'm hoping he will distract them away from my grass seed by, thank you Mr. Duncan, distract them away from my birdseed by putting lots of peanuts and other such things that the birds like just a few yards away so that they don't go onto my newly laid lawn.
Ooh.
Well, you're back, Mr. Duncan. Let's have a look at the live. I think I've bored... Probably nobody's there anymore. I think I've bored everybody to tears.
No, it's very busy.
With my gardening tales.
It's a busy one.
But of course, lots of people, if you've got a garden, if you're lucky enough to have a garden, during these lockdown conditions that we're in, a lot of people have been doing a lot of gardening. And, well, I've been doing a lot. That has taken me probably a week or two to prepare, and I wouldn't normally have that time because work, having to deal with Mr. Duncan's problems, that takes up a lot of my time. So yes, so I'm nearly there now, nearly there. So Mr. Duncan, maybe we can show Mr. Duncan's coughing now. Can you hear?
You don't have to tell everyone.
They can hear you. You're choking on water.
Please.
Mr. Duncan chokes on all sorts of things, doesn't he?
Can you spare my embarrassment?
What's that, Mr. Duncan?
Well, I'm coughing. Don't draw attention to it.
Well, you always draw attention to things when I make mistakes.
That is true. So show us what you've been doing, Steve.
I've already done that.
What you've been over to the corner.
I haven't been over, no, because I've got my best shoes on.
Oh, for goodness.
Well, I wouldn't say my best. Do you want me to go over to the corner?
Okay.
I've been pointing.
I tell you what, I will go over to the corner then.
Okay.
Right there. You stay there, and I will sort of guide. I will guide everyone through what Steve has been doing.
I've just done it, Mr. Duncan. You'll just bore everybody if you go over it all again. Oh, he's going to do it anyway because he likes the attention. Look at him. There he goes. What's he got hold of there? Yes, that's my rake.
So
That's my rake.
This is Steve's lovely rake. Can you see it? This is what Mr. Steve uses when he's trying to get little bits off the grass. He's trying to collect and gather things on the grass. And when I was at school, Steve, when I was at school, people used to say I was very thin. They used to say I was as thin as a rake.
Yes, that's a very good expression.
It's not very nice, though, if people are calling you thin as a rake, because it's a bit of an insult. So I wouldn't call it nice. A lot of people might say it if they are insulting you, you see. So this is a rake. And this can be used as both a noun and also a verb as well. You rake the grass. This is called a rake. So you can use it as both a noun and a verb.
How can we use that? Is there an idiom with the word with rake in it? You can rake over something, can't you? Yes, if you were to try and cover something up.
Yes, if you want to hide something, maybe something you've done wrong, you might rake over something to cover it. You are trying to cover something. You rake over something. You are trying to cover something that you've done wrong.
Marina. Hello, Marina. Says, interesting to know about your work. My husband is doing the same in our little garden, planting and preparing the ground. Well, it takes a lot of time. You can't skip any of the steps. I thought you could just chuck grass seed down and leave it, but in fact, unfortunately, you have to do quite a lot of work if you want the lawn to look lush, that's lovely and green and growing fast and looking healthy. So you've got to dig it up down to 8 to 10 centimetres, then you've got to put some loam in there, which is or some peat, a bit of organic compost, and then you've got to stamp it down, and then you've got to rake it over, put the seeds on, and I've got to do it at 30 grams per metre, Mr. Duncan.
30 grams?
Not 1 gram less.
Really?
Or not 1 gram. Actually, it says you can put 50% more in to account for losses to the birds who will peck away and eat the seeds.
I'm really surprised, actually, because Steve is going to try and put grass seed over there. And if there's one thing that the birds love, it's seed. So I have a feeling that a lot of Steve's grass seed will actually be taken away by the birds.
Well, as I was saying earlier when you were absent, Mr. Duncan, when you had gone away, that if you distract them by filling up the bird feeders, then maybe they would rather, if you put something more attractive to them in the bird feeders, like the sunflower hearts, then they will be more tempted to go over there than onto my newly seeded piece of ground. Well, is anyone still here? Have I bored everybody to tears?
Well, come on, so have a look at the live chat. Adrian. Oh, hello, Adrian. Mr. Steve, do you know what wisteria is?
Oh, yes.
We know wisteria very well, don't we?
We do. When we came here, there was a large... It's like a climbing plant.
It's very similar to ivy or a vine.
Yes, it looks very attractive on particularly older buildings made of stone, what we would call sort of period properties, maybe 100 years old. It looks very nice on older properties, adds character, and you get these beautiful sort of mauve flowers. The only problem is the flowers don't last that long, and the plant is very destructive. As we discovered, we had to get rid of it because it had forced its way through the brickwork into the roof.
Yes. Can you believe it? This particular plant is very destructive. It can actually destroy your house, and that's what it was doing, wasn't it, Steve? It was actually starting to destroy the house.
It had got underneath a felt roof.
Everything.
It was all inside the guttering.
Everything.
We went up into the loft, and it was coming through there as well, lifting the tiles. So, I mean, it's attractive, but you've got to keep it under control or it will destroy your property.
Yes, definitely.
So I decided that because of where it was in a very dangerous area to put a ladder up against. I wasn't prepared to risk my life every year trying to prune this wisteria. So we got rid of it.
Yes, we got rid of it completely. It's gone altogether because it was literally tearing the front of the house to pieces. Oh, here's a good suggestion, Steve.
Yes.
Ricardo says perhaps Mr. Steve needs a scarecrow. Maybe I could do it.
Yes.
Perhaps I could stand in the corner of the garden. Shall we see? Shall we see if it works? We'll try it now. So whilst Steve is talking to you, I'm going to go into the corner of the garden and I will see if I am good at being a scarecrow.
Well, Mr. Duncan, you certainly scare people away. So I think scaring the birds will be a breeze to you. It'll be very easy. He only has to stand in the street and everybody disappears.
You are so funny.
I know, that's why I'm here. So there he goes. He's going to pretend to be a scarecrow. Of course, he's a bit scruffy. Those are very old clothes. And there he goes. And can we hear any birds? Can we see any birds? No, it hasn't worked, Mr. Duncan. I can still hear them. He's standing.
Go away.
He's standing on the ground that I've carefully prepared. I will have to reprimand him later. Well, that's a full-time job, Mr. Duncan. You're going to have to stand there for at least 2 weeks until the grass seeds have sprouted or germinated. I think you've done enough, Mr. Duncan. I think you can come back now. Yes, somebody says. Gardens are... Yes, Palmyra. Palmyra says, do you have problems with moles? They destroy lawns. Well, Palmyra. Well, we do have moles in the area. In fact, when I dug that ground... We don't have them in the garden, although we did have them when we first moved here. About 200 yards that way, in the field, there are lots of molehills, but we haven't had them in our garden for some time.
No.
However, Palmyra, I dug that ground over, 2 weeks ago now?
2 weeks ago.
And when I came down the next day, there was a molehill. So the moles must have been listening to me underground and decided that they were going to come up and have a look. Anyway, it's gone now.
Mr. Steve has some moles on his face.
Ooh, oh, don't point that out, Mr. Duncan.
Do you want me to show you one of the best ways to get rid of moles? I'm going to show you, but you will have to move out the way for a moment. I will show you the best way to get rid of moles. I'm going to show you. I'm sure Steve will be completely outraged by what I'm about to do. So this is what you do when you want to get rid of moles.
There he goes, he's off again. He can't resist. Even though he's done absolutely no work whatsoever, he's almost claiming that ground as his own.
Moles! Moles, go away! Go away!
I think he'll attract them. Yes, of course, that is a tried and trusted method of getting rid of moles.
That's got rid of them. They've gone now.
But you have to wait, Mr. Duncan. You have to wait for hours, and you watch them coming up, and then you have to rush over and beat them over the head. You can get things to scare the moles away. Electronic devices which you can put into the ground, and they give off a noise which the moles don't like. I don't think they work very well. So I'm hoping that they won't come back. I mean, you never know, they might. But if they do, Mr. Duncan is ready to eliminate them. Cull the moles.
I won't kill them. Please don't get the wrong idea. Ignore that. I'm not going to kill them. But I might encourage them to go somewhere else.
Ernesto says that a lot of people, Ernesto says as well, I've been doing a lot of gardening too in this lockdown with the help of my wife. Well, aren't you lucky? You're lucky that you've got a partner that helps you in the garden. I have to do it all myself. Mr. Duncan does nothing, zilch, zero in the garden. It's all down to me. Have you got anything to say for yourself, Mr. Duncan?
The only thing I've got to say is this. Can you guess what I did there?
He made a very rude signal.
Yes.
Still, that means I am super fit and Mr. Duncan is not. I'll tell you one thing, gardening, particularly heavy digging and putting plants in, it really makes you fit. I've never felt fitter since I was 18, about 10 years ago. Mr. Duncan, that was a joke, but he went right over his head.
I didn't hear it.
Right over his head.
I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, well, you can read the live chat.
Okay.
I used to dig a molehill to find them when I was a child, says Mika.
Oh.
What cruelty and savageness to exterminate those creatures. Shame on you, says Sergio.
No, we're not going to do it. No, we just asked them if they would mind digging their holes somewhere else, not under our grass.
Harry Hassan says, hi Mr. Duncan, Mr. Steve, big hello to you from Norway. I had to fix some housework, but Mr. Duncan is lucky to have Mr. Steve by your side. Yes, see, I do all the housework as well, all the housework, all the gardening.
Liar.
Mr. Duncan occasionally washes some dishes.
No,
puts
it's
some
lies.
washing in.
This is lies.
But it's not very often. I do most of the manual heavy work around here.
I must admit, Steve, you really are uncovering and opening a very large can of worms.
Mr. Duncan does not know anything about cultivation. Be careful, Mr. Steve. Says Hamidreza Karim. Thank you for that. Talking of worms, says Lewis, I was told that when there are moles and worms, they make a living earth. That is true. Because the moles eat worms. So if you've got moles, it means there's lots of worms, which means you've got healthy soil. So that's very true, Lewis. The only problem is you don't want moles on your grass after all the hard work. Mind you, it's not as though we're using that particular patch of ground for anything important.
No, we're not.
It's just decorative. We're not sitting there. It's the top end of the garden and it's just decorative. So if a few moles come through, then you can just bang it down and the grass grows back. So I'm not going to worry about moles.
The strange thing, Steve, about that corner is that it's been the corner of the garden that we've always tried to put right, but never have, because there used to be, who remembers many years ago when we first moved here, there used to be a big shed behind where Mr. Steve is standing. So in the corner, who remembers the shed? And there are some video lessons that I made where you can actually see the shed. It is actually there. I think in my memory lesson, there was a lesson I did all about beautiful memories. And in one particular scene, I actually come out from the shed. However, the shed, unfortunately, is no more.
It fell apart. I was thinking of replacing it with a new shed, because when you have a garden, you think, oh, I've got to have a shed. But I decided not to, because you know what happens when you buy sheds and outbuildings, or just like you have spare rooms in your house, it ends up being full of junk. So I decided not to. Plus, I know I could have kept all the tools, the gardening tools in there, but we do have a garage and I keep them in there.
Yes.
So there's plenty of space in there. And if you were to keep tools in your shed, there's always the risk somebody will steal them. Plus, I'd like a shed, but you've got to maintain it, the roof, you've got to paint it,
Yes.
and it will just end up being stored full of junk.
And it's amazing how many people across the UK have at least one shed in their garden. So most people will have some sort of building or some sort of wooden structure where they keep things. Quite often it will be full of junk, or of course some people like to use it for certain reasons. A lot of men. So this is something that happens here in our culture, doesn't it, Steve? Quite
Yes,
often
it does.
Quite often there is a place where the man in the family, if there is a husband and wife, quite often there is a place where the man will actually go to escape the family. And sometimes it can be his shed, the shed in the garden. He will escape. They call it, what do they call it, Steve?
They call it a place where the man will go to be apart from his wife. It is often called a man cave.
I love that expression.
Cave.
I love that expression, man cave. So it really dates back. This thing actually refers to prehistoric times, when I know it sounds strange, but imagine Stone Age man. And he has a place where he likes to stay on his own. And quite often it would have been a cave, you see. So it is a kind of humorous expression, or a humorous name for the place where the man will go to, normally to escape the wife and kids.
Well, interestingly enough, Mr. Duncan, you imagine that it's the man escaping from the wife, but I've got a friend who has 2 sheds in his garden.
Okay.
And he told me it's not his choice to go there. His wife sends him there when she's had enough of him. Go into your shed, she says to him. I don't want to see you for 5 hours. Because, of course, with couples, it's not all lovey-dovey all the time. You do need to have your own space, and that's quite important, actually, to have your own space, time to think, to reflect.
Everyone needs their little bit of space. Even in relationships, you have to have some time alone or apart, and then you can appreciate each other a little bit more. So it is a common thing for a man to have his own place where he can go to do his own things.
Well, yes, it'll be maybe doing a bit of woodwork. Maybe my friend's got a wood stove in his shed, so even in the winter he can go there, light his stove, and do whatever he wants to do to get away from his wife, who has in fact told him he should go there because she wants him out of the house and away from annoying her.
So perhaps sometimes the wife will say, "I've had enough of you. Go outside. Go to your man cave. Go and do something else."
My dad had a man cave.
Really?
Yes, he used to be in there for hours on his own, smoking. It was like a spare room downstairs that he called it his office.
Office.
But it was really his man cave, and he didn't like being disturbed if you went in there. I remember a few times sort of going in unannounced and getting a few harsh words.
From who?
My father, who was
Oh,
in
really?
there. Because, it's... What do people do in a man cave anyway? Maybe we should ask.
Well, if it's a man, it's quite often reading, maybe, possibly looking at the internet. Maybe he's looking at things on the internet he shouldn't be looking at.
Well, it wouldn't have been years ago. It's just to read the paper. People used to read papers, didn't they? They probably still do, but
People used to.
Well, I think people used to always have a paper every day delivered, or they'd buy a paper.
Yes.
When we grew up, my father always had a paper every day. But I think sales of papers, newspapers I'm talking about,
Okay.
newspapers have gone down dramatically over the last 20 years, I think, because less and less people... Because it's a lot of time commitment to read a newspaper. It would take you half a day, hours to read all the content.
Yes.
And nobody has time anymore.
Sergio, I can't believe I went to so much trouble to bring the live chat to Steve, and now he's hardly mentioning it. Sergio says, I would have a room where I can smoke cigars
Yes,
and also have wine in a cabinet.
exactly.
This sounds like your dad's room.
So, yes, that's it. So he used to go there and smoke. And I know that he used to drink alcohol as well, because Mother would find all the empty bottles.
We are really giving a lot away today.
Giving a lot away, but that's just a man thing, isn't it?
Yes. What? Smoking yourself and drinking.
Yes, and he would probably be just away on his own, time to think and reflect, read the paper or whatever.
But then again, he did have to live with you and your mum, so I can understand why he would turn to drinking alcohol, because being with you is enough to turn anyone to drink.
Well, I wasn't exactly... I think yes, anyway, we won't go into that. Anna Picker or Anna Pisa says, what did you do with the daffodils you took out from the ground a few days ago?
Yes.
Well, I planted them at the bottom of the garden.
Oh.
So I was digging them out. Mr. Duncan was filming. I didn't realise.
Yes, we actually watched you doing it.
Yes, so I put them at the bottom of the garden so that I didn't destroy them, so that they will make the front of the garden look nice in the spring.
So next year we'll have lots of daffodils coming up in the front garden.
Beatrice says, I have lots of ants. Yes, I know. I've seen a few ants already. We've got like some paving stones, like a patio area at the
concrete.
back of the house. And they seem to like to live under there. And then they all come out in the height of summer and fly off. They gain wings, don't they? Certain ants gain wings and then they fly off.
The flying ants are the ones that have to find a new nest. It is their job. And quite often they will also be queens as well. So the queens will be protected by the other ants and they will create new nests as well. Ari says, I use my garage as a smoking cave.
There we go.
It would appear that a lot of people are secretly smoking and drinking behind their wives' backs.
Well, maybe the women are doing it as well. Maybe the wives are probably doing all the housework. I
thought you were going to say, I can't imagine a wife smoking and drinking. I really can't imagine it. Even though, of course, we do live in a time when everyone is equal. So I suppose women can also be chain smokers and alcoholics as well. So no, I'm not going to be unfair. Men and women can also have these habits.
Yes, Jamila, a shed can add beauty to a garden, yes, because you can get some lovely, attractive-looking sheds. I mean, you can get the basic ones, which are very basic, just for storing your tools in. But now you can get garden sheds that are a bit more ornamental, with like a veranda that you can sit out and things like that. So they can add character to your garden. I do agree, but to put a shed there, it's on very sloping ground, it would cost a lot of money because you've got to level the ground, then you've got to have a concrete base, then you've got to have the shed. I think I decided it wasn't worth the expense because just having a builder to come round and prepare the ground was going to cost about £2,000. Then the shed was probably another 2,000, and I just thought it's not worth the effort. It would look nice, true, but we decided against it. A bird of prey is the best thing to fight moles. Well, we've got plenty of birds of prey around here. Why don't you put a pond in your garden, says Vin G. Well, I've said to Mr. Duncan, a pond would be nice, but again, a pond, a lot of effort to put it in, and you've got to maintain it because the water can go green, and then, of course, in the summer, it attracts mosquitoes and flies, so then you'll get bitten by mosquitoes.
Yeah.
Certainly if you live in a hot country where you have mosquitoes, the last thing you would want to put in your garden is a pond because you don't want to get malaria. If you live in a country with malaria, you do not want standing water lying around. Something which I know in hot countries that have malaria, a big problem is discarded tyres from vehicles. Because if you've ever seen a discarded tyre, it holds water inside it when it's rained. And of course that's an excellent breeding ground for mosquitoes. And even if you haven't got malaria in your country, you don't want lots of mosquitoes buzzing around you, biting you in the summer months. So the answer is no, I would like a pond, but I'm not going to because I don't want the mosquitoes. We don't have a big problem with mosquitoes in the UK, but it's still enough that they would be buzzing around you if you were sitting out having a drink, and they would bite you, even though they wouldn't carry any diseases here in the UK. We don't have mosquitoes that carry diseases. But, of course, many of you will live in very hot countries where malaria could be a problem. You, Mr. Duncan...
What's this?
That is a daffodil bulb.
Ah, so this is actually what daffodils look like. This is what they look like under the ground. So there is a daffodil bulb.
That's one that I wasn't able to... I could plant that somewhere else, couldn't I?
Yes.
So I did some more digging today, because I need to...
There's Mr. Steve. Mr. Steve looks like Wurzel Gummidge.
Nobody knows who that is, Mr. Duncan.
They do?
So I did some more digging and dug up some more plants, so I'm going to have to put those in somewhere now so that they're not wasted. Unfortunately, you shouldn't really dig up plants with bulbs while they've still got leaves on them, because they're trying to put all the energy into the bulb.
What's happened to your pot?
I've told everybody about that, Mr. Duncan. You're too late. I've told everybody.
Mr. Steve had to destroy the pot. Here it is. He had to destroy it because the plant had grown so much. Ooh. Steve couldn't get it out the pot.
Quran Kareem is in Birmingham.
Yes.
Is that Birmingham, UK?
It is.
Wow.
Apparently it's very sunny in Birmingham as well.
Well, it says cloudy here.
Yes.
So yes, it's going to rain later. So I've got a lot of work to do because I want to put the grass seed in before it rains. It's going to rain this week. And I don't want to have to... You've got to water the seed, haven't you? So I don't want to have to do that job.
It's okay.
Sergio says I better set up a cigar room or a wine cabinet. That would be very nice. Where do you park your car? Well, I do park it in the garage. It's quite a big garage, so you could get 2 cars in there. So half of it I use for storing my tools, lawnmower, and the other half I put the car in. These days most people don't put their cars in the garage anymore. They leave them out but I like to put it away.
Did you talk about this?
No,
So this is what Steve has bought. This is his new... Oh no, this is plant food. So where is the grass seed?
the grass seed, Mr. Duncan. I don't think I've got that out yet. I think that's still in the garage.
Oh, I see. So this is actually something you give to the plants to feed them. So this has lots of nutrition, lots of lovely things to help Mr. Steve's new grass grow.
That's fertiliser.
Oh, I see.
That's all-purpose fertiliser. Continuous release or slow release. Little granules, which is very useful for sort of dressing, just sort of digging in around the roots of your plants to give them a bit of a boost. Of course, the only trouble with fertiliser is it also boosts the weeds as well. So you get more weed growth when you put fertiliser in. But I just use that, put some in the hole where I dug the hole to put the plant in. I sprinkled a little bit of this in so that they give the plant a bit of a start, a bit of a head start, a bit of food for it, a bit of fertiliser.
So quite often you have to have some extra nutrients in the ground, don't you, Steve?
It's useful because particularly at that end of the garden, because the soil was very firm, full of clay, solid, so I had to dig some nice organic material in, rotted manure to encourage the plant to grow and to retain water.
A lot of people do that, don't they? If they cut the grass, or maybe they cut some of the plants in the garden, quite often they will leave all of the waste in the corner of the garden. So they will make something called compost.
Compost. That's the word, Mr. Duncan. A bit of because if the soil is a bit sandy, then you want organic matter in the soil to encourage the roots to grow and retain the water. Somebody said earlier that you could have an affair in your shed. Very true.
And maybe if you had a computer in your shed, you could do all sorts of things. You could have an affair, a secret affair, through the internet with maybe someone in your local town, or even someone in another country. Ooh.
That was Saturino. Who said that? Who I'm very surprised about.
Me too.
So yes, if you wanted to have a secret liaison during these coronavirus shutdown times, then you could have an affair in the shed. And I've just said a word which Mr. Duncan didn't want me to say. But don't worry. Oh, Marina says, in horror movies, the shed is where bad things happen. Well, I think bad things are happening anyway, but certainly they can happen in a shed. No, we don't have two garages. We've only got one garage. It's just we can get the car in and the space at the side to store things as well.
For the past 3-4 weeks, I've been saying to Steve, there is one word that you can't say. Don't say it at all on the live chat, ever. And he just said it. So, bye everyone. Bye. Thank you very much for watching me on YouTube for the past 14 years. Thanks everyone. My channel is now going to be deleted. Thank you. Thank you, YouTube. Thank you everyone. Thanks, Steve. You've just completely destroyed my channel there.
It won't be deleted, Mr. Duncan. It's just a word. It's just a word. I didn't say anything that I shouldn't have said.
Words can sometimes be very harmful, especially if you are doing it here on the internet.
Imagine, says Constantine, smoking in your man cave and your wife showing up with a rolling pin. Of course, that is always the traditional object.
Is it? What, for beating a man?
For beating a man up, the implement that the wife will always tend to use is a rolling pin.
So welcome to traditions that we have here in the UK. One of the traditions is the wife beating the husband over the head with a rolling pin.
Of course, whether people use rolling pins anymore, I don't know, because people don't do very much baking or anymore, although they have been probably during this lockdown. But if you have a rolling pin and you're a lady, then you know what to use to beat your husband with.
Good advice there.
Yes.
Or,
Did you plant the apple tree, says Andy? No, that was there when we came here. It's probably about 20 years old, I would say. Can you see the apple tree then?
No, the apple tree is not there, but you can see the cherry tree.
Okay.
But the apple tree is quite old. Unfortunately, the apple tree doesn't look very well anymore.
It's got disease. I'd like to chop it down, but Mr. Duncan won't let me.
No.
Even though I really should have the last say in the garden, as I do all the work in the garden. So I should be able to say, if I want to cut that tree down, Mr. Duncan has no choice in the matter because he doesn't do any gardening.
You know how I feel about cutting trees down. I hate to see trees cut down. It's almost heartbreaking. I don't know why. Whenever I see a tree, especially in someone's garden, and it's doing no harm, it's just a lovely tree that's trying to survive like all of us, and then someone goes, I don't like that tree anymore, I'm going to cut that tree down.
Well, sometimes you plant trees in your garden and you don't think at the time how big they can become over time. And most trees will grow to, very large proportions. And most people have small or average sized gardens. So if you don't control the growth of that tree, then it will become too big for the garden. It will grow over next door's fence. It'll block light. It will annoy your neighbours.
Yes.
Most trees will grow very tall, but you can control them as long as you do it at the right point.
Yes, you can trim the tree without cutting it down. But so that's the reason why I don't want to cut the apple tree down, because it's nice. It's a nice thing to see in the garden. I like trees. The birds like the trees as well. They like to sit in the trees and sing like the blackbird is at the moment behind Mr. Steve. And the pheasant.
Yes, the birds have been very active, because when I've been digging over the soil, of course they love to look for the insects and the worms. So I've had the birds, the robins, very close to me. And I dug that hole and I turned round, and when I came back after a couple of minutes to do some more digging, the robin was inside the hole that I dug, and it was pulling out worms from the bottom of the hole. Well done to the birds. Where's Mr. Duncan? He keeps disappearing. I come on a Sunday and he just disappears. Mr. Steve, says Ricardo, you use a lot of chemical products. Well, I do put a bit of organic fertiliser in, but that is quite useful when you're putting a bush in or a tree, just to give a bit of extra fertiliser to help it, to get it going. So I probably won't put it in anymore. I don't use very much of it.
We've just had a very interesting question.
What's that?
What is a rolling pin? Here it is. So this is a rolling pin. I will move. Let's move further back slightly. There we go, so we can see it. So that is a rolling pin. It is something that you use to flatten dough or pastry when you are cooking, or about to bake a cake or a pie.
That's
also, you can use it to beat your husband over the head when he's come home late and he's drunk and he smells of perfume.
Or he spent too long in his man cave.
Ah, yes. So you might go and knock on the door and say, come on out. It's time to come out.
That rolling pin has seen better days. As you can see, that rolling pin has a lot of scuff marks. in it because we've been using it not to roll pastry, but to... what have we been using that for? It's all scratched.
This rolling pin...
scuffed.
This rolling pin has been used for all sorts of things. Sometimes when we can't find a hammer,
Yes.
we use the rolling pin. So this rolling pin has been used for many different things. I don't know what this is. I have no idea what happened here to the rolling pin. It looks dreadful. But this rolling pin is useful in the kitchen if you are making pastry and you want to make the pastry flat. You will use your rolling pin. So there it is.
Nurato Ab says, Mr. Steve, do you know Monty Don? Well, yes, he is a very popular gardener, English gardener who has a television show, Monty Don. My mother likes watching him. I watch him occasionally if I'm in front of the television and he's on. He's got a very relaxed style, hasn't he, Mr. Duncan?
I always fall asleep when he's on. If I'm watching Monty Don in his garden, and he has a beautiful garden, by the way, but his voice and the way he speaks, it makes you feel like you want to sleep. You want to go to sleep.
But what he doesn't know about gardening isn't worth knowing.
Yes.
That's an expression you can use if about somebody who's very clever and
They're an expert.
they're an expert in something, and it could be just a friend of yours or somebody at work, and you can say, oh, what they don't know about whatever the subject is isn't worth knowing. And that means that they I could say what Mr. Duncan doesn't know about teaching English isn't worth knowing.
Wow. So much pressure.
Oh dear. People like the rolling pin.
Yes. Valentina says, thanks, Mr. Duncan and Saturino. That is a good idea. I will use it against my husband. I'm sorry. I'm really going to get into trouble today. Not only has Mr. Steve has said the forbidden word, but also now we are encouraging we are encouraging wives to attack their husbands with rolling pins.
I know, because there's been an increase in domestic abuse
Okay.
during the lockdown.
That's a turn of subject there.
I know, so we don't really want to be encouraging domestic abuse, as there has been a large increase in reported cases of that
Yeah.
during the lockdown, with husbands and wives spending much more time together than they usually do. So yes, maybe we ought to retract our statement that we made about the rolling pin.
So we don't actually advise that anyone uses a rolling pin as a weapon, okay? We just want to be clear on that. Just in case anything comes back, not just today, but also in 5 years' time, maybe someone will discover this video, and when I'm an international superstar, they will use it against me. They will say, the most famous English teacher in the world used to encourage women to beat their husbands with rolling pins.
Yes,
and that will happen.
You're worrying about me using the word.
No, don't say it.
I'm
Don't
not
say-
going to say it, Mr. Duncan.
If you're going to say it, just mouth
Yes,
it. Just
so you
go,
were worrying about me using the word. But in fact, a far more serious thing that we've been talking about is encouraging women to beat their husbands with rolling pins.
yes, please don't do it.
Mika's off to bed. So yes, have a good sleep, says Helen.
Good night, Mika. I know it's very late where Mika is, in Japan.
Yes. You want to go to Japan, don't you, Mr. Duncan?
I do. I've become very crazy about Japan, to be honest. It's been a thing I've always been interested in. Many years ago, when we used to live at a hotel, my father helped run a hotel, and we had a chef there from Japan, and I was fascinated by him. And he used to show me all of these martial art moves. He was very good with the martial arts. So his name was Kai, C-A-I, and he was from Japan. So I've always been fascinated with Asia and also Japan as well. So I want to go to Japan, but one of the things I want to do, I want to go to Tokyo. I want to experience crossing the road where there is a huge crossing in Japan. There is a very famous crossing, and people have to run across the road before the traffic lights change and before the traffic starts moving again. And also I want to go on the bullet train as well. I quite like the idea of riding on one of those wonderful space age bullet trains.
Well, people have moved on from rolling pins, Mr. Duncan, as weapons to use against their husbands.
Whew, good.
We've got suggestions of using a pan,
Oh,
a frying pan.
frying pan.
So yes, people are becoming inventive and use. Of course, that is another object that you always see in comedy films. Is wives beating their husbands with saucepans, because but of course that is painting the wife as somebody who is just in the kitchen all the time, and of course you can't really say these days and you can't sort of apply that narrative and assume that a woman is just in the kitchen all the time.
Wow, I've never heard anyone take so long to get to a point.
My lips are very dry today, Mr. Duncan. So yes, maybe a laptop. Maybe use a laptop instead of a rolling pin. If we're going to be politically correct, we can't use objects that would confine a woman to the to the kitchen.
Okay then. All
Like
right,
rolling
Steve.
pins and frying pans.
Steve, all you're doing is making this worse, by the way.
No, I'm just explaining.
People are becoming more and more interested in how to inflict injury on their husbands.
I'm sure they don't need me to tell them.
No. I think maybe a year from now, maybe rolling pins will be banned. You can't have a rolling pin, and if you do, you have to have a license. So if you are a chef or a professional cook, then you can have your rolling pin as long as you have a license for it. And then people will be walking around with rolling pins under their clothing. What?
Maria says, is there a difference between pastry and dough?
Well, I suppose as you are making something, I suppose pastry is dough when it's being made and mixed. Would you say?
So. I think dough is like a sort of a pliable mixture of things. So I mean, if you mix water with flour
And eggs.
then and you sort of kneading it with your hands, then that's dough. But then when you roll it out
Flat.
that then you would then call that pastry.
With one of these.
With one of those, a rolling pin, yes, exactly. So if you're not beating somebody up with it, you might be rolling out your dough to form pastry, which then you can put over the top of your pie. So yes, the dough is the thing that you knead with your fingers to get it ready for whatever you're going to use it for. So if it was bread, you would then knead the dough, put it into a tin and let it rise and then bake it in the oven. But if you were then going to make pastry, similar mixture, you would roll it out and put it over the top of your pie.
And of course, it's worth mentioning the action, the verb knead, is spelt differently.
Yes.
It is K-N-E-A-D. Knead. You knead the dough. You press. You move. You manipulate the dough as you are mixing it. So all of the ingredients in the dough has to be mixed together. You will press it, squeeze it, squash it. You will knead the dough. And of course, when you are making bread as well, bread is made of dough. It is basically dough that you put in the oven. And it magically becomes bread. Oh, talking of food.
Yes.
Oh,
Ooh.
I'm feeling hungry.
And we know what happens after the live stream.
After the live stream ends, we are going to have a hot cross bun and also a cup of tea as well. Sounds very nice.
I don't think we'll be able to get hot cross buns from the bakers for very much longer
No.
because they're a traditional cake for Easter.
Yes.
And of course, Easter in the UK has passed.
It's gone.
Was it 2-3 weeks ago?
It was a long time. Easter seems like something in the very distant past.
So they will only make them for a short period of time either side of Easter, maybe 2-3 weeks before and 2 or 3 weeks afterwards. So I think next week when we go for our regular bread order,
Yeah.
we will find that the hot cross buns have gone and we're back to tea cakes.
Oh, tea cakes. So
for the rest
next
of the
week.
year.
So next week we think the tea cakes will be back, and there will be no more hot cross buns until next year, 2021. Between you and me, I can't wait for 2021. As soon as this year has come to an end, I want to just forget it. Have you ever seen the Men in Black?
Are you
Steve?
asking me?
Yes. Well,
Yes, I have. Is that where they put up that thing and flash it in your face and you
Yes.
forget everything?
I want someone from Men in Black to actually use that little thing that erases your memory, so I can forget all about 2020.
Well, you don't like Will Smith, so it's no good asking him to come over.
Well, Tommy Lee Jones can do it.
Is he still alive?
He is.
Oh,
We
okay.
can have Tommy Lee Jones. I like him. What?
Well, yes, fine, okay. Right. Are you... Alex, going back to rolling pins,
Oh God.
Alex says, wives in our country have big and small rolling pins.
Huh?
They use the small one if you come home drunk at 1 a.m. and the
Okay.
big one if you come in after 3 a.m.
Oh, I see.
So
so
that's-
they have two sizes.
Oh, we've started something now, Mr. Duncan.
Yes. I was just trying to get rid of that subject, and now it's back again, saying hello, hello.
So, are we off, Mr. Duncan? Are
We
we?
will be going soon. However, I was 15 minutes late today.
Well, I thought I was upstairs, sort of relaxing after digging, and I heard the patio door being shut, and I thought that's a bit late.
Yes.
Has something gone wrong?
Well, yes, there was something wrong. The internet wasn't working. We had a problem with the internet again, so the internet cut off. So that's why I was a bit late. I had to wait for the internet to come back on. So the start of today's live stream might not actually be very good. The quality of the picture and the sound. So at the start of it, it might not be very good because the internet was playing up. It was being a real pain. It kept cutting off, unfortunately. So that's the reason why I was late today.
Cap Devi 2 says, when I was young, my annoyed mother threw a knife at me.
Uh-huh.
And it went into the frame of the door just above my head.
Really?
No joke. So what were you doing, Cap Devi 2,
My goodness.
to get the wrath of your mother
That sounds
to
horrendous.
such a level that she threw a knife at you? Well, what country are you in? I'd be interested to know. Because if a parent did that to a child in this country, you could report them and you would be taken away. The child would be taken away,
Yes,
probably.
and the parent would.
Yes.
The parent would go to prison.
I know. So
Oh, Adrian is trying some English food. I have just had an English mince pie with tea for the first time. We often have minced pies at Christmas. So it's normally a small cake and it's filled with a kind of, it's like spicy filling, isn't it, Steve? It's got currants and sultanas.
what was that, Mr. Duncan? I was reading the live chat and I wasn't listening to a word you said.
Can't you do two things?
Well, I normally can, but I've normally got one eye on you. But for those few seconds, I just switched off.
It's not the eyes I'm worried about, it's your hearing. I'm sure. Do you know what I think? I think Mr. Steve is going deaf.
No, I'm not.
I think Mr. Steve is losing his hearing.
No, I just didn't. I wasn't listening to you, which, of course, is something I usually don't do.
I know what I'm doing for Christmas. For Christmas, I'm going to buy Mr. Steve one of those big ear trumpets. So you put it in your ear so you can hear things like Like you used to see sort of 100 years ago, a man sitting down in a chair, and he would try to hear what people are saying with his ear trumpet.
There's a big difference between hearing and listening.
I see.
So you might hear somebody talking.
So what is a mince pie?
But you might not be listening to them.
He's not listening now.
What is a mince pie? Yes, it's got pastry on the outside, short crust pastry, I would say, with a mixture in the middle of we call it mince meat, but it's not meat. It is just it looks a bit like meat, but in fact it's dried fruit.
It has the texture. The texture is like meat, I suppose.
Yes, it's lots of dried fruit mixed with sugar and maybe some candy, peel from the fruit. And it's quite
spicy.
Spicy, yes, and a bit of cinnamon in there as well, probably.
Ooh, but I don't like it. I don't like mince pies, and we normally have minced pies at Christmas. So I'm glad you enjoyed it. Yes, something that the English people like to eat around Christmas time.
Andy Starr says, does money grow on your trees in your garden? Well, if it did, we'd be very rich.
Yes.
Because we've got quite a few bushes and trees, but unfortunately, it does not.
No. None of our trees produce money, unfortunately.
Oh, yes, I see what you mean. I've just read what Adrian put.
Yes.
Well, Mr. Duncan, shall I go away?
Yes.
And prepare the hot cross bun and a cup of tea.
That is a very good idea.
While you go on for an extra 10 minutes.
Steve, go away.
I'm used to hearing that quite a lot, but it's normally used with words that are a lot ruder than that.
I don't know what you're suggesting there. I don't know what you're suggesting.
Oh. Chris is having shepherd's pie at his aunt's.
Yes. Well, you made shepherd's pie last week, didn't you, Steve?
I did, and yesterday. Did you tell people what I made yesterday?
Yeah, Steve made the most delicious stew. Lots of vegetables, lots of healthy things, also a little bit of meat. I know. I'm going to get criticised, but we had a little bit of meat that Mr. Steve bought from the local butcher shop. He had to queue outside with lots of other people. Did you manage to keep your distance this time, Steve?
Where was that? What was that, Mr. Duncan?
Oh, for goodness sake.
No, yes, I did keep my distance.
Did you keep your distance?
But I noticed that people are getting sort of relaxing a bit with that now.
People are sick and tired. They want to go back to some sort of normality.
So difficult.
Normality.
But yes. Anyway, Mr. Duncan, I'm going to say ta-ta for now, which is only 10 minutes, and then I'll see you in the kitchen.
Okay.
You've got the rolling pin, so I'll have to beware when you come in.
Yes.
Although I don't think I've said anything today too controversial, apart from that word, which Mr. Duncan didn't want me to say.
No.
So I'm going to say goodbye to you all, and have a fun week learning English with Mr. Duncan. And I will see you all again, same time, same place, next Sunday.
See you later, Steve.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. There he was. And now he's gone. Mr. Steve has left the building. Or should I say, he's gone into the building after leaving the garden. Thank you very much for your company today. Thank you very much to Tomek. Don't be embarrassed, Mr. Steve. You are getting on a bit. So your hearing may deteriorate. If something will deteriorate, it means it gets worse. It is not as effective or as strong as it used to be. It will deteriorate. So I do think sometimes when I'm talking to Steve, I don't think he hears what I say. And I think he might be becoming a little mutton, which is Cockney rhyming slang. We say Mutton Jeff, which means deaf. You can't hear very well. So I think Steve, now he is approaching a certain age, Next year, by the way, next year Mr. Steve will be... Really, honestly, I'm not joking. So I think he's starting to lose his hearing. So I might have to get him one of those big ear trumpets so he can hear me. Thank you, Anna. Thank you also, Noemi, for your lovely greetings and also your lovely goodbyes to Mr. Steve. Thank you very much. I must say it has been a busy one today, a very busy day. Valentina says sometimes I use the rolling pin to flatten the pizza dough. Very good, yes. This evening I'll have to keep myself from using it. Well, I suppose it depends on how you use it. So you can use anything, I suppose, but it does depend on how you use it. How you use it. We will be talking tomorrow about the differences between ability and not being able to do something. There are many words and phrases that we can use. I was going to do it yesterday, but I didn't have enough time. I was going to do it today, but unfortunately, we didn't have enough time. So I will go now. I hope you've enjoyed today's live stream. Thank you very much for your company. I hope you've enjoyed the live stream live from the birthplace of the English language, which is England, of course. It's Zara. Hello, Zara or Zira. I am late today. You are a little bit late. I will be honest with you. You are a little bit late. Just a little bit. Because I'm going in a moment. Where is the item? You didn't show us. The item. Yes, I showed you earlier. My lovely bubble wrap. So this is the thing that I showed earlier. This was my common object that I showed you today. It is my bubble wrap. Bubble wrap. Something you use to wrap fragile or delicate things up with. Bubble wrap. Yes, I will be back tomorrow, definitely. Tomorrow I'm here again. What time? 2 p.m. UK time. Tomorrow. I will be back with you tomorrow once more. Hailey Kwang says, see you later, Mr. Duncan. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Palmyra. Bye, Mr. Duncan. It is time to have some nice snack. Yes, I am going to have something nice to eat, and I hope you will have something nice to eat as well, to cheer you up during these strange, crazy times. Thank you also, Sujin. Thank you, Hiroko. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed today's live stream. Something different on Sunday. We always have a different live stream with Mr. Steve joining in as well. Thank you very much for your company today. Thank you, Ernesto. Thank you also to Saturino. Thank you, Alex. Mr. Duncan, what is the meaning of the phrase, not mince your words? If you don't mince your words, it means you say what you really think. You use the words that you want to use. In other words, if you say something cruel or unkind, you use the actual words that you want to say. You are honest. You are blunt with someone. You don't mince your words. You say exactly what you're thinking. You express exactly what you are thinking. You don't mince your words. Giovanni, Mr. Duncan, yesterday I watched Napoleon Dynamite. Why was the movie important for you? I don't know why. I love Napoleon Dynamite. It's a brilliant movie. It is unusual, quirky, strange, and also I like the story. The story is kind of inspiring. I don't know why. I always feel quite inspired whenever I watch Napoleon Dynamite. I feel that somehow there is a message coming through. It doesn't matter who you are, where you are, what other people think of you. You can always do something incredible. I love the dance sequence, you see. One of my favourite parts of Napoleon Dynamite is when he does that dance in front of the school. And I think it's brilliant. I love that scene so much. It always makes me happy. But in fact, all of the characters in the film are good as well. So I love it. I love the movie very much. What is the animal that keeps walking behind you? Behind me, it might be a blackbird. It might be a blackbird. Thank you very much for your company. I'm going now. I've been here for 2 hours. Can you believe it? 2 hours. And of course, I will be back with you tomorrow as well for another 2 hours. I'm here every day. This is Mr. Duncan in the birthplace of English. Thank you very much, Yasia. Thank you, Palmyra. Thank you very much for joining me today. Don't forget, you are not alone. If you are still in isolation, if you are still having lockdown where you are, guess what? So are we as well here in the UK. See you tomorrow. Thank you very much for your company. Thank you very much for joining me today. Thank you to Mr. Steve as well. This is Mr. Duncan saying thanks for watching. See you tomorrow from 2 p.m. UK time. And of course, you know what's coming next. Yes, you do. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. And ta-ta for now.